Okay, could you understand that statement? What did you make from the statement, the party president is very upset with you? What did you take from that? What did it mean?
That my days in the ministry are counted. This is one of the reasons why Tun Dr. Mahathir, before I received the email from him asking me to render back the position to him, because he was the one who appointed me at the position. And what was the problem? Okay, the problem with that program, the One Bestari Net and few other contracts with that specific company that was initiated since the days of our former Prime Minister, and who happened to be the president of my former party, it performed badly. And when their contract ended, they wanted to continue or to renew their contract, and based on the professional evaluation by professional bodies, by research teams, and by the leadership of Ministry of Education, with the advice of the Penasihat Undang-Undang of our ministry, we decided not to renew the contract. And we also received a lot of advice from the Auditor's General Report. The Auditor's General Report was talking about that, and a lot of other reports. The PAC in the Parliament has been discussing about these topics, and they are still discussing about this issue. And a lot of complaints from the teachers, from the parents, from the students, from schools. So at the end of the day, we decided not to continue with the contract. And as a result, that made what, according to the then Prime Minister, my former boss, according to him, he said that made my party president very upset. And I was called 5 times to the Prime Minister's office just to discuss about this issue. There were 2 times where I brought with me the leadership of Ministry of Education to explain to the Prime Minister in length and professionally about what really happened and what led us to that decision. And the final meeting I had with him as the Minister of Education, he told me that your party president is very angry with you. And after a couple of days, when I was in holiday, I received an email from him, a letter asking me to, the rest is history.
Charity food we do for them. So, but we didn't know when. That's the best day.
At the moment they're okay for food. Because all the houses are destroyed.
Yeah.
So do you guys want to become?
I'm interested in
Okay, baby. Assalamualaikum. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of What's Going On Malaysia. My name is Hartini Zainuddin. Thank you so much for joining us. As usual, we've got so many people already, I wouldn't say tuned in. Tuned in is an old-fashioned term. Already, what's the word? Logged in, streamed in, clicked in. We've got Janki Rahman from Kalimantan Timur, Janaki. For real, you're watching from Kalimantan. Thank you so much. Guys, I hope you can hear me. I hope you can see me because tonight's episode is going to be awesome as usual. Thomas Rao, hi Harith. Hey, how you doing? Good evening, Harith. Tuning in from Kelana Jaya, Brian Kwan, everyone out there. Thank you for choosing this moment on a Monday night to watch this live. If you're not watching this live and you're watching this after the fact, also thank you very much. And I would like to remind you, please share right now. If you're on Facebook, just share this live streaming show onto your Facebook page. If you're watching on YouTube, click and copy and then share into your WhatsApp groups because tonight's episode is going to be off the hook ataupun dalam bahasa Malaysia off the hook. It's a new word. I know. Check with Dewan Bahasa dan Pustaka. They will let you know. Alpha, nice baju. Yes. Yeah, you know, I've always been wearing like a black shirt or like a gray shirt or a white shirt. So just, you know, getting into the mode because things are turning around. We are all, well, Kuala Lumpur at least, Klang Valley is in Fasa Keempat, Phase 4. I hope everyone is doing well out there. It's almost as if it's back to normal. But we're going to be talking about that because that's what we're going to be discussing, the National Recovery Plan. Hello from Johor Bahru. Hans A.W., hello to you. So let's get straight into it, shall we? So if you have shared this live streaming, if you have shared this YouTube clip, you know what? Cut to the chase. Let's talk about what we're going to talk about. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the National Recovery Council. Now, I assume most of you know what that is. If you don't know what that is, well, that is... how shall I say? It is I'll read straight off this article. This is a slightly older article, but it explains what the National Recovery Council is. It was formed by the then Prime Minister, Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin, and basically it is a plan to execute smoothly how this country, Malaysia, can exit the pandemic in a systematic and safe manner. And of course, the people invited into the council, it's well, name upon name of many ministers, senior works ministers, education ministers, all types of ministers. If you look at the list, this was from the previous government. Most of them are still around, but also in new positions. Plus, also invited into the council are the two guests I have on my show today, which include the Yayasan Chowkit co-founder and child rights activist, Dato, Dr. Hartini, and also University Malaya Professor of Medicine and Infectious Diseases, Professor Dato, Dr. Adeeba Kamarulzaman. So how this all started, ladies and gentlemen, is that I got in touch with Tini and I was like, hey, Tini, you're on the National Recovery Council. I'd love to hear how it's going. And she checked with the powers that be and got the permission. And then I also said, hey, who else do you think, could come onto the show and chat with us? And she very kindly put me in touch with Professor Dr. Adeeba, and she also very kindly said yes. So, tuan-tuan dan puan-puan, dengan tidak membuang masa lagi, please wave your hands in the air like you just don't care, and welcome into this Facebook/YouTube/Spotify studio, Dr. Hartini and Professor Adeeba. Hey guys, hold on. I got to bring you in. Yes, there we go. Hey, hello, hello, hello.
Hi, how are you? Hi,
I'm good,
Harith.
thank you. Hi, Hartini. I call you Tini, Hartini.
Yeah.
And Professor Adeeba, how are you?
If you're calling Tini, you can call me Adeeba.
Ah, so it's Tini, Adeeba, and Harith. Just hanging out, chilling, talking. First of all, formalities aside, how are you guys all personally doing
Good,
We're
in
good,
this
thanks.
good.
next
Well,
phase? Any difference in phase 4 compared to phase 3, compared to phase 2, as far as you're all concerned? Tini?
the traffic's back. Honestly, I've just been going in and out of the office and coming home, so I can't really see. But there's a lot of more people out there, so it's almost back to normal in many
It's
ways.
almost
Yeah,
back to normal.
yeah.
And
For me, it's been a
Professor,
huge
and
difference, of course,
yeah,
because during the intense phase of the Delta surge, the hospital was just overrun with patients. So now it's a lot calmer. We've closed
Great.
several of the COVID wards, and we've just got a couple of wards, at least at PPUM, dedicated to COVID.
now that you mentioned the intense surge of the Delta variant, are you saying it's no longer around, or there's no longer a surge, or we have it under control?
As you can see from the figures, that Ministry of Health reports daily, the numbers are coming down. It's definitely still around. We're still seeing, new patients each day, but a huge difference from what we had between May and September.
Okay, that's very good to hear. Before we jump into the main topic of tonight, I thought I personally would like to broach this particular topic, which has been, as it turns out, everyone is talking about it on social media. The case of the single mother of 9 kids who was recently sentenced in a court in Tawau, sentenced to death for the possession and distribution of shabu. If just we'll get the facts from this article. Ibu tunggal 9 anak dijatuhi hukuman mati, mandatory military edadada. So the mandatory sentence she received from the Hakim Mahkamah Tinggi Alwi Abdul Wahab, and the amount that she was in possession of was 113.9 grams of shabu in Kampung Pekalan Wakubah Batu 15 Jalan Ampas Tawau, almost 4 years ago. So first of all, just to give a context to everyone, I don't think we're here to talk about whether the law was carried out wrongly or rightly. I don't think any of us were in a position to do that because we don't have the facts of the case. But I want to just bring up something. 131.9 kilograms of shabu in the context is lighter than my Samsung S10, which is this light. It's this light. This is 160 kilograms. I did my research, and she has been sentenced to death, which is a mandatory sentence. Now, none of us here are lawyers, but Professor Adeeba, you did tweet about it. I saw that tweet, and perhaps you can give a context to people. What are your thoughts? What are your feelings about this particular case?
Yeah, before I go into this particular case, ever since I got involved in HIV prevention for people who use drugs, I learned more and more how our drug laws just, needed to be revised big time. And then, during the COVID-19 pandemic, that became even clearer because 60% of our prisoners are in prison for drug use, many for minor drug use. And if you recall, just a few weeks ago, KDN released figures in Parliament that 51,000 prisoners and their staff, and with some staff and family members, were infected with COVID. So, there are many reasons why we need to revamp our drug laws, because we put them, we've criminalized them, we put them into prison. just even for minor drug use and possession. Now, in the case of this death sentence, we know that it's complex, but many are either duped into being carriers or are desperate for, some kind of income because of the, financial circumstances they're in. But there are also people who do it out of pure greed. But what is clear is that the death sentence for drug trafficking has not made an iota of difference in terms of, reduction in drug supply coming into this country or any of the other countries that have death sentence. There's about 30 odd countries with death penalty for drug use. Most are in Asia and some in the Middle East and Africa. And for instance, in the case of Iran, the number of people executed for drug trafficking has been going up in the last decade, and so has the amount of drugs coming into Iran. So as a form of deterrent, it has not been shown to really work. And then, of course, there are issues around, you get the wrong person. And like many said on my Twitter feed, it's the ikan bilis that get caught and get hung and not the big fish.
Yeah, so the point that you brought up, it's a fact, I think, according to statistics, it is not a deterrent. So then if this kind of sentence is not a deterrent, basically it's a, inverted commas, punishment, which would then bring in the moral question: are we as human beings allowed to punish by killing, by murder, if you want to use that word?
Yeah.
Tini, what are your thoughts on this particular case and the death sentence?
Well, actually, some of my friends who are activists in Sabah and working on the issue wanted me to find out if this single mother was stateless or undocumented. But you know what, I haven't been able to find that out yet. Although I really think it doesn't really make much of a difference. I believe she's a single mother. She comes from, a poor background, and she was obviously, eking a living, selling fish, and she has 9 children. What can I say? So there's a link between, I think, poverty and being drug mules out of desperation. I'm not saying, as Dr. Adeeba has pointed out as well, that that poverty is linked to being drug mules. I mean, there are people who do it for greed. But I'm saying that these are desperate times. We see this rise in poverty, and we see so many people losing their jobs, and including people in the informal sector having daily wages. So I'm not surprised that people are this desperate and they turn to it. But of course, all this background information, for me, what was stark was the fact that all her background information, her circumstances, were not taken into account, I believe, when you give this mandatory death penalty. I don't work with adults, I work with children. So most of the cases that I work with are children who are there at the pleasure of the king, who have mandatory death sentences coming to life imprisonment because they are children. And you see them in prison growing up, and it is devastating. For those children having life sentences and growing up in prison since they were 14, 15 years old, all the way up to 33, 34. And that's one thing. But then to have a single mom having this, mandatory death sentence and having 9 children, what on earth are you going to tell the 9 children? One, who is going to be taking care of these children? That's my concern as an activist, and the devastation and pummeling in terms of how it affects and impacts not just the mother, and the children. I don't know. I just don't know. It's something that we need to look at, and especially the fact that there is this women are also given this mandatory death sentences, and that you have this compliance and non taking into consideration the background and circumstances, and you just give this death sentence is just unfathomable. And honestly, for me, barbaric.
Yeah, so I'm not that familiar with the laws. So circumstances don't come into play.
That's what I
am I hearing
understand.
that
I was
correctly?
just glancing
Yeah.
through the Amnesty International report for 2020, and it does not take into consideration background and circumstances.
Because in my post, I can bet you she's not driving around in a pimped out black
It's more
Valfire carrying Gucci
absolutely,
bags. So
absolutely.
I don't think she was profiteering of others' pain and suffering. She was just, at most, probably, I'm guessing, feeding her family and maybe paying the electricity bill. I don't
Yeah.
know, you know?
Yeah,
So
but that was not taken into consideration. That's what I understand from the report most of the time. So all the time. So who knows?
yeah. We're gonna keep an eye out on this topic in particular. Okay, this is a good segue into the National Recovery Council. Does something like this fall into other avenues? So first of all, let's start off with I've been told earlier, how many meetings has the National Recovery Council had so far?
Well, I've attended 2,
Two.
3.
How many what? Sorry.
How many meetings?
Actually,
How many council meetings?
4. That with the one we
Okay.
attended was the 4th. There was one that we were
3.
not.
You
Yeah,
didn't
we were not
attend.
members yet. And then during Tan Sri Muhyiddin's PMship, and then there was a first one we attended, and since then we've had 2 more, so 4.
Okay, Professor Adeeba, starting off with you, because I think you've probably been at all 4. What is discussed in general terms? I know there could be 1,000 answers to this and 1,000 things are discussed, but in a nutshell, in a Reader's Digest version, what is on the table?
What's on the table is, I think, the state of the epidemic, where we are. Usually we start off with that, with where we are with, the level of infections, where the country is heading with the disease itself. And then it's more the big picture things. So at this very last meeting, Tini presented, the impact of COVID-19 on very poor people, and the problems with hunger, and how she proposed, which she'll tell you in greater detail, how to manage, sort of food distribution more efficiently, and making sure it gets to where it's really needed. Other things that were discussed was, the impact on the SMEs. That was discussed at great length at the last meeting, how the SMEs have been severely affected, and how to, overcome some of the issues, in particular issues around workers. There's this mismatch between the people who are unemployed and the types of people needed to work in SMEs, particularly in the types of jobs that Malaysians generally don't want to take on, like the palm oil estates and some of the 3Ds, as they call it. So that was, Tini, that was discussed at great length, how to essentially revive the economy, bring back manufacturing, etc., but by doing it safely. So on the Ministry of Health side, there are many plans to ensure that, we do that. We open up safely. I think the Ministry of Health is working towards a national testing strategy, which hopefully will be announced soon, so that the rakyat's clear as to when they should get tested, and where and how, and who needs to be tested. Because although the we've got to give a big shout out for the effort that went into the vaccine coverage, and that really has turned the pandemic around in Malaysia. That's why we're seeing a reduction in number of new cases and deaths, etc. But it's not the panacea, right? It's not 100% protective. So we still have to have these measures in place so that we diagnose infections early. We don't allow for too many clusters, that we keep an eye on all of that so that we can continue to live our lives as normally as possible without having more outbreaks and burdening the health system again.
Yeah, and actually on that note, there's so much to talk about. There's so much to cover. Everybody who's watching, if you have a comment or a question, keep commenting your question. We'll bring that up in the left-hand corner of the screen. And you were talking about the rate of vaccination. Yes, kudos, we're flying along at that point. However, what's been hitting the news recently, all these, I know they're calling it anti-vax issues of people. So for example, I'm just going to get a quote here from Adeeba Kamarulzaman. He says, "Sorry to say, if you are not vaccinated because you choose not to be vaccinated, then we will make life very difficult for you and continue to make life difficult for you." This is a statement from Adeeba Kamarulzaman. And I know, Professor, you've also supported the vaccine mandate. Now, with the various kinds of informations being spread by the anti-vax group and all, how does the National Recovery Council or do they need to take steps in stopping this kind of acts, or are you paying any attention to it, or is it just it'll go away? What's the feeling within the council?
A quick question would be that this is one specific question that we've not addressed on the National Recovery Council. I think it's more within there are many committees, right, responding to the pandemic. So there's the vaccine committee, the JKJF, Ministry of Health itself. It is not thus far been a topic that's been highlighted in the Recovery Council, with the exception of, I think, when we were discussing reopening of schools and the importance of having teachers, as many teachers, as complete vaccination as possible.
Okay, on that note, Tini, because you do deal with children and kids. I personally, from a personal point of view, can't wait for my kids to go back to school, because I think they're missing out on some very important skills, which is social learning. From your point of view, how do you feel about that? About kids, should they go back to school? Should they not go back to school? And why not? Or should they?
Well, I brought it up at the last, not this past council meeting, but the council meeting 2 weeks prior to that. And I'm actually a proponent of kids going back to school. Malaysia is actually the country, the only country actually, well, it's the country that has the longest number of school shutdowns, something like 48 weeks, which is a lot for children being out of school. And then, I brought up the fact that statistically, there have been 828 suicides among teenagers and young people, because there is no socializing. There's so many reasons why, and the fact that kids, I can see my own kids sliding, and not being able to socialize with everyone, and I think there are lots of safe ways to get the schools reopened. I'm not a doctor, and I am not Adeeba. So I am just speaking as a mother and as someone who sees what's going on, and the fact is, online education for many children has not worked. It's not the right way. 2 years of going through online and doing screen sharing and being at your laptops and phones for 6 hours a day is taking a toll. The kids need to go back to school, but again, cautiously. How do we do this quickly? It's too long. It's something that I think the experts need to discuss. But I say hurry up. Let kids go back to school.
I'm in one agreement with you. Anybody out there, if you're watching or listening, let us know. If you agree, let us know. If you disagree, and remember to keep on sharing this live streaming show. Prof, just wanted to also ask you, as TD said just now, she's not the medical person in this, but in a general sense, are we on the right track? Is there a light at the end of the tunnel?
I want
Because
to say a big yes. Yes,
okay,
yes, Harith. At one point in May over to September, when things were really bad in the Greater Klang Valley, we were all struggling really to find beds, to make sure that patients get the best care. It was very, very tough, but now slowly but surely the numbers are coming down. Yes, we're still admitting patients, but it's at a much more comfortable pace, and in general the patients are less sicker. Even those who have breakthrough breakthrough infections after being vaccinated. I was just doing ward rounds today, and they get category 3, 4 disease, but we were not seeing the rapid deterioration that we were seeing before in the unvaccinated. So it's so different, and we all can now breathe a lot better. And doctors that we borrowed from other departments are slowly being sent back to their parent departments, and we're closing wards and things like that. So there is light at the end of the tunnel. Having said that, I think we need to continue to be vigilant. We need to, without being totally, there needs to be a balance, right? We just have to be sensible. I think that's the word I'm looking for. We have to be sensible. We all have to be able to risk assess and at what level do we find acceptable. Let's say, for whatever reason, the numbers start going up in KL again, then it's time to step back. We make sure we have the mask on, limit the number of people we have in our house that don't belong to that same household. Think again about going out to dinner for a short while until the numbers come down again. Those kinds of individual risk assessment. What level of risk do you want to accept? So I think that's what living in an endemic COVID-19 is going to look like. It's not going to go away forever.
You're right. It's not going to go away forever. And the steps that you have just mentioned about masking and social distance and all is actually all very well and good for some of us. But Tini, you come across many areas of society where, even having a mask would be something that's not even thought about because they couldn't even afford it. How you are privy to the people out there who live in darkness on the edge of everything else. What do you bring to the National Recovery Council? What do you say to the people in that room about these kind of issues?
Well, I think what I bring to the table, which was actually quite surprising that I was even on the council, is the fact that I am grassroots, right? And I am not very diplomatic lots of times. I try really hard. And I froze, actually. I was awestruck. There were so many people in that room making policy decisions, and I'm not used to it, so I sort of blanked out. But I think what I bring to the table is the voice of the people, many times from the kampongs, from vulnerable communities that have no say, from children that have no say, and trying to bring a perspective, I think, that most policymakers at that table within the National Council perhaps need reminders of. I'm not talking Adeeba. Adeeba's grassroots as well, and she does both, and she straddles all sectors. But many of the policy makers and the decision makers there need to know what's happening, right? And everybody speaks numbers, right? But you have to understand what it is, right? When you do Padang, right? 10 ringgit feeds an entire family for a day because there's no money. You know, people have lost their jobs, and most of these people who have lost their jobs that I work with are people in the informal sector, daily wage earners. You know, the shrimp farmer, the vegetable sellers, and the boys who sell sarai, cut the pasar if the pasar's closed. The people who pick up your rubbish, stateless communities, of course. People in rural areas, people from Rawang, people from Kajang, single mothers who have not filled out the 16-page JKM application form to see if they're qualified to get aid or to get food baskets, because half of the daycare centers in Malaysia have shut down and they have no place to send their children. If before they couldn't afford daycare center, now there's really zero, nothing. Right? Even middle class people can't afford a lot of the kindergarten and nurseries. They've shut down. If you're a single mother and you have to fill that 16-page JKM application form for poverty, you're not going, because you got no money.
Are you using? Sorry, when you say 16-page, are you just being metaphorical about it, or
No.
is it 16 pages?
16 pages to fill out to get asked for food aid. 16 pages.
To get food aid, you need to be able to comprehend.
Yeah, you have to stop at the center. You have to stop at the JKM centers, the one-stop centers, and you fill out 16 pages. No one's going. Not if you have children and you're a single mom and you have no job. How are you getting on the bus? Where are you going to put your kids? With your neighbors? Where are you going to put your kids? What if you're illiterate? All right, and then it's not one bus stop; it's 2-3 bus stops, right? Especially if you're outside. If you're in Sabah, you walk 2 hours to go to the ATM machine. Where are you going to go to these centers to go fill out forms? That's one, right? And then of course, you know, different organizations have different vetting processes, right? Some are 64 questions. 64 questions to get, you know, 100 ringgit basket, food basket. You know, it's not going to happen.
Sorry, give me an example of why 64 questions. What are the questions?
They want to know if you get cash transfers. Let's say some NGOs do this, right? If you want to get food baskets, you need to qualify. You have to. There's a vetting process. How much income do you make a month? How long have you been without an income or a job? Where do you live? We want your addresses. How many dependents do you have? You know, all sorts of things. Do you have electricity, money for electricity? What are you going to use the money for? You get, you know, cash transfers, say 100 ringgit, 200 ringgit. Please tell me what you're going to use the money for, you know, and you have to actually spend the money on the things that you're using it for, right? That's for cash transfers. If you do food baskets, I will tell you this, milk powder and diapers is a luxury that's not included in food baskets. Most mothers and families now have babies and children who have not had milk, right? Whether it's breast milk, which is the most important, or formula milk for a long time. They use tea bags to banjo tea into bottles so that they can have 6 feedings a day, because there's no money for milk, right? And mothers have no breast milk. You say, oh, if you live in a rural area, you can collect vegetables growing on the side of the longkang, kangkong, right? All that vegetable is bota, is gone, because everybody had the same idea in rural areas. Then you talk about urban settings, right? Even in rural settings, 3-4 families live in 1 room, 2 rooms. So, you know, it's complete poverty that we're talking about. We're talking about abject poverty with no access to services, no access to food, having to fill out long, complicated, maybe some are not complicated, but long application forms to get 100 ringgit, 200 ringgit. That's one. 2, and it's not like what you guys are doing or what some of us are doing. The baskets in many cases are filled with unnutritious, not very healthy food, right? You look at it, it's like minyak, whatever, gula, whatever it is, right? It's not what the families want, it's what they give, and you take it lah. When in reality, and you think about this, and this is the point that I want to drive home, which I mentioned to Adeeba the other day as well. The mother who was pregnant in March of 2020 has now a child who is 18 months old, right? The child has not had much breast milk, has not had proper formula milk, has not had solid food that's healthy, nor has had any nutritious food at all for 18 months. You think about that. Malaysia has what the UNICEF calls this double-sided malnourishment type of issues, right? So we have obesity on one side, we have stunting on the other, right? We have these two great this thing. Malaysia has the unhealthiest group of population in the whole of Southeast Asia. You have children because of the pandemic, because of poverty and stuff, not having a decent meal since March of 2020. Kids, you see scabies, you see TB, you see starving children, you see elderly who have no access to anything. You see, no money, no transportation, no access to hospitals, no access. It is a nightmare. And this is what I brought up to the council. I said, it is not just about food distribution because A, you're missing people. Two, food distribution has to be the entry point, but you need to look at a whole slew of other social issues as well. You need to look at health. You need to look at maternal health. You go to Sabah, the mortality rate for children under 5 years old has doubled, tripled within the year for the whole annual thing. If the mortality rate is 600 plus from 2015 to 2019, in 2021, within the 6 months, it's already doubled. It's 1,000 something. Those are registered numbers, not including those children who are unregistered, non-Malaysians, who are sick and at home, who never made it to the hospital. It is bad.
It is bad. And as I'm listening to you, like Prof. Adeeba, are there any answers? Those are the complaints, Hartini. That's a real situation. So when you bring this to National Recovery Council, are there answers? I don't know. It sounds.
Yeah, I think clearly, what COVID-19 has done is really magnified all this pre-existing sort of huge gaps in our society. The poverty that prior to this we may know about, but not really seen in the magnitude that Tini has just, very vividly described. The issues around migrant workers, that we've kind of, know that that's a problem there. But COVID-19 has really, shoved it in our faces, whether it's in the number of cases that amongst migrant workers, the brought in dead, and part of the underlying reason for this is how their living conditions are terrible. So I think, and then of course, places like prisons and detention centers, and the Tini was describing the really conditions of abject poverty in places like Sabah, for instance. But right down the road in Taman Medan and Chowkit and all that, there were lots and lots of cases coming from the PPR flats as well. So for now, I think the Recovery Council, we've not really had a chance to really look into these deep social issues that we have that exacerbated the pandemic, but also the types of people who were terribly affected by the pandemic. And it's sort of, it made the pandemic worse in terms of numbers of people affected, but they were also the people most affected, right? So for now, we really haven't focused on this kind of the really root causes. We are looking at if you like, the immediate recovery phase, getting the economy restarted, and putting in place the health system to cope as we reopen. But you're absolutely right, Harith. This is the time for us to really take a step back and look at what and how and who we want Malaysia to look like post-pandemic. Are we going to continue to ignore all these segments of society that have been so badly affected and will continue to be affected by future pandemics? Or are we going to say, good, well, we had such a tough time in May to October 2021, but we vaccinated a lot of people. We're going to try and live as best as we can with the virus, and then those issues that Tini just described, and all the other conditions that I've listed. Well, that just goes into a too hard basket. If that is the case, then that's going to be a really sad situation for us. In fact, I did raise it at the council the other day when we were talking in the context of reviving the SMEs, and I reminded them that, hey guys, it's well and good. They're mostly guys, by the way. Tini, myself, and Dato Habiba, the only ladies.
The only women.
It's well and good to get the economy started and to get everyone working, but please do not ignore the underlying problems, the terrible living conditions that the migrant workers lived in that created the problem in the first place. I think many of the employers were allowed to get away with it in a sense. So I think
I need to
move forward. These are the more difficult conversations that we need to have at the council.
I need to tell you, though, that Tan Sri Muhyiddin and the ministers did listen, and there was silence. When I was saying what was going on, and I was showing my phone how I get 200 food pleas a day, and this is what's happening, and all this stuff. And there is, I did come up with with other NGOs, we did come up with a plan that the council has approved in principle, and we will be calling. What?
I see you're $1 million lady now.
Yeah, so we asked for money. So we're getting it. So I will chair this council, the steering committee, which I'm hoping to get you guys in as well, to look at ways to sort of address this issue, from the emergency relief and feeding people to looking at the longer term, mid-term and longer term social protection issues, and bringing in all the different stakeholders to address the issues so we can create more resilient ecosystems. And the council did agree to that. But, it's a step-by-step process. I don't know if we're going to get the first tranche soon, because, even if it's every day, right? And Harriet, this as well, it's every day. And so, I'm telling them, like, we cannot wait we cannot wait a month. We cannot wait 2 weeks. Please, release the first tranche. Let's just try it out. We've got people on the ground waiting. We've got focal persons. We've got hungry people that need to eat. People are asking me for 10 ringgit, Harriet, to feed their family. You know this. It's just,
I don't know how she does this. She gets messages on her phone with people asking.
Sharing the council. I'm like, look at my phone. I 200 food, please.
All my years of being a doctor, I just can't do that. I
can't do what you do, right? So I think that's what the strength of the council is, bringing different perspectives. I mean, so yeah, I'm hoping we do a better job.
Is there a timeline given to the council? I know you've had 4 meetings. Is there an endpoint? And do you have?
You were appointed for 2 years. I know. Is it
for
1
2
year?
years, and every 2
I need
years.
to look at my TOR. Oops, I'm not sure it's
I think
1 year.
I think it's 2 years, right? But we're meeting every 2 weeks. Yeah, supposedly we're supposed to be meeting every 2 weeks. So yeah, and I think what's amazing is this past council meeting, we actually had representatives from the opposition there who were very eloquent. I thought, I think everybody there is pretty good. And, it's this huge table. I actually froze when I walked in. I'm like, oh my God, there's so many people. But, everybody knows their stuff, I think. And so I'm hoping that like, I see Adeeba and I'm like, there's hope at the end of the tunnel. I've got all these good people. And we're trying, and we'll see. So the last council meeting, I spoke about food distribution. The next council meeting, I'm talking about child protection and online stuff. And let's see, I don't know, because we've got a huge issue, right? With no kindergarten, no nurseries, 50%. We've got a huge issue. And how do you do it?
Tan Sri Muhammad Nur Yaakob, who
Yeah,
leads
he's
the
great.
Khazanah Research Institute that's been doing a lot of good work looking at, social protection, urban poverty.
Yeah.
So hopefully Tan Sri with his team can also provide the sort of the background data and other, data that they have from Khazanah Research Institute. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So,
it, it sounds very daunting, and it sounds almost on the verge of impossibility, because I think, I mean, here we're only talking about at the moment, a little bit of children poverty, and there are probably a multitude of other problems and issues. Let me ask both of you, what is the biggest hurdle do you think? Like, even deep in your heart, you think, what, this is really getting in the way, and I don't know whether we can get over this, in terms of what some of you may be proposing to the council, or in terms of moving forward. What might be the biggest hurdle?
Bureaucracy and the
bureaucracy and the
silent way
politics.
that we work, bureaucracy and the siloed mentality. That
Yeah.
is the biggest problem.
And certain
And
agencies,
mistrust, because Tini clearly it's comes from a completely NGO background. I sort of straddle, health and NGO, academia and civil service and NGO. But when I wear my NGO hat, I that mistrust and the difficulty to work together, sadly. It's kind of improving, and I hope COVID has taught people that lesson. But it's the bureaucracy just is draining. It's really draining.
Okay, I just a quick shout out to Said Asmi, who apparently said bureaucracy at the same time as Dr.
as Adeeba.
Adeeba. So there you
Yeah.
go. Tini,
I
what do you
think
think is the biggest hurdle?
for me, I did this whole thing on food distribution, right? And then of course all the different agencies start coming in. It's just bureaucracy is off, and there's this not all, some of the agencies are very defensive in terms of what they've done and what they've accomplished or not accomplished. And I'm sitting there going, we haven't accomplished much because we still have people not eating. We haven't accomplished very much because there's still people starving, right? Can we just put aside our differences and really collaborate and work together? We're not here, NGOs aren't here to compete with the government, right? We're just trying to fill in the gaps and do the stuff. And so for me, I think the biggest thing was that defensiveness, because they're doing whatever, and and we come in as NGOs and say, well, you haven't done such a great job, but you haven't done such a great job, so we need to come in and help you, right? And we know it's not that we know better; we just know certain things you don't, right? And we know certain people, certain communities. So that was one, but I think politics was scary. I think I'm just very aware of the fact that there are politicians in the room, and that's where, going back to Adeeba's point about trust, and these are politicians here. A lot of them are. I'm fine with the civil servants, but I'm really nervous with the politicians. So I'm hoping that politics aside, we do what's best for the people. And for me, that's it. I just want to feed people, protect children. I don't have any other agenda. And we need to do this together.
So, in a nutshell, bureaucracy and politics. However,
and mistrust.
To get anything done, you need to deal with bureaucracy and politics. So, wow, talk about a hurdle that won't move. Okay, putting aside bureaucracy and politics, those are the hurdles. What are the two of you, both of you? What are you warmed by? What are you inspired by? What are you? What have you seen, or have you seen anything in the National Recovery Council in the last at least 4 meetings where you said to yourself, "Yes, this is the way it should be. This person is getting things done." What? Have you any good things, any good tales to come out of it so far?
I think we are moving in the right direction. I think each of the agencies, if previously we thought, come on guys, can you please get your act together? It looks like they're now getting their act together. Definitely KJ is leading the Ministry of Health and putting in place, systems and things that are hopefully, the rakyat can follow and will help us all live with the virus moving forward much more easily and understandably, easy to understand. And a Ministry of Education, I think, came up with a sensible plan to open up the schools. It was consultative from what I can understand. So, it does seem to me like things are settling down and moving in the right direction. I've been a little bit involved in those 181 SOPs that are now going to be distilled down to
9, right?
10 or maybe
Oh.
less.
10 and 9,
yeah. So yeah. So I think the immediate and midterm sort of changes are coming into place. It's the long-term, deep issues that, whether it's full health transformation and economic transformation, educational transformation, all those things are going to take a lot more time and planning and thought. Yeah.
And Tini, what has made your heart warm?
I think I think the chairman's done a great job at moderating and sort of not leading the conversation, but making sure that we don't stray off point. I thought he's been very good at moderating and ensuring that we stay on target and giving enough time for everyone to speak and listening. I think the listening was very important for me. Maybe because I just finished this whole Acumen Fellowship thing about listening and listening to what people are saying, and he actually listened, which was amazing, I thought, because most people don't. What about mental health? Yeah, mental health was the first topic. I'm looking at what Sayazmi said. Mental health was the first topic that was brought up when I attended the National Council meeting. And then I don't know what happened. And then we have to bring it up again with mental health. Anger management, I don't know. We haven't brought up anger management, but mental health we have. And I don't know what happened to mental health. We did talk about it.
We did. And Dr. Siva came up with some really good plans that will probably be absorbed in sort of the activities by the Ministry of Health.
I think it's going to be across board, right?
Yeah, I think at the last meeting, there's probably going to be, mini task forces, subcommittees to address specific issues. For instance, a task force on the SMEs was created, and I'd imagine moving forward there'll be further subcommittees on social protection, and I'm guessing.
I'm guessing,
Michelle Suyan Chong asks, how can we remove, if we can, politics or politicians from these movements? Can we, like in the West? We don't need politicians to validate the movement, do we? I mean, how does it work?
I'm not. Honestly, I don't know.
Come on, Tini.
Well, let me say that we need to remove politics from the overall COVID-19 response. That's essential. Is it too late? Well, when I say politics, I'm referring to sort of federal state politics, and like what's thankfully, in a way, it wasn't so bad here compared to like the US, for instance, where politics got in the way with everything, even masking, vaccinating, etc., etc. But there, politics come in many ways, isn't it? There's also office politics. There's also interagency politics.
Oh my God, yes, yeah.
It's not just politicians, So.
Yeah.
But
Okay. So, sorry, we were discussing mental health earlier. Tini, you said earlier, what was the statistic you gave, the figure about children who had committed suicide in
838 or something. It's something. It's 800 plus.
Between when and when?
Between last year and I'm not sure it was between this year alone or it was between last year and this year. But it's a lot. It's 800 plus.
You're talking children, as in under 18?
Yeah, teenagers. Yeah, young people, teenagers, kids, children under 18.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh. Do you,
Yeah.
do you
See
happen
what the
to
numbers are.
have
I'll give you the
notes?
stats later, but yeah, it's 800
Any,
plus. It's kids,
any
teenagers.
particular story that you can share with us of?
Kids committing suicide.
Mm.
Only kids out here in some of the international schools, but I don't know them personally. It's not my kids' school, but it was school. It was kids from other schools that my kids know. Yeah.
Oh.
But they were kids.
Yeah, that seems unfathomable, almost.
It's mental health is a huge issue.
Does mental health fall under medicine, Professor Adeeba? Does it?
Yeah. But obviously, it's not just. I mean, medicine psychiatrists. But you need counselors, you need psychologists, you need, in some ways, behavioral therapy. So it's not just us, the medicos, that should be involved. You really need lots of other people with other skills as well, like psychologists, behavioral therapists, and all that.
And this would be something that will the National Recovery Council be picking up? Do you think, or I mean, it sounds
one of the things. Yeah, I know that the council in its first iteration Tan Sri Muhyiddin was very concerned about this, and hence one of the first meetings actually had Dr. Siva from JB address the issue. But now, as Tini said, I'm not quite sure. I think it probably got absorbed into something for the Ministry of Health to look into.
Okay. This is Norman Goes, a regular person who catches the show.
Oh, there you go, 1,700.
Yeah. 1,700 people have died suicide January 19 to May 2021. 83.5 cases are women.
800 something were kids.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's
sorry.
It's a lot of people. Yeah.
It's, that's a rather dampening statistic. Okay, so you said 2 years. We are barely into probably the first or 1/10 of this journey of the council.
I think it's fair to say we're still finding our feet, right, Tini?
Yeah, sounds like
we're just emerging from a really traumatic, at least I personally, from a really traumatic 4, 5, 6 months, trying to manage all those cases that we had at the hospital and being part of the Greater Klang Valley Task Force, So hopefully we will, be able to do more a lot quicker. But the sense that I got is that last meeting that we had was the first time that we really kind of landed and found our feet. And, we had, as Tini mentioned, we had members of the opposition, and it almost like a full council now and ready to take on the work. Yeah.
So members of the opposition are only going to be invited once, or
no, they are permanent
part
members.
of the council. Yeah.
Oh, so along the way, people are invited to join in.
Yeah.
So
there was Dato Rizul,
Dr. Zul was there.
And Wong Chen, and one more person from the AP whose name.
Don't ask me. I was frozen that day because I had to present. So I was terrified.
That's very heartening, because I've always believed that putting the politics aside, there's always good people on every side of the divide.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And why can't we all sit at a table?
Exactly.
And so I'm glad to hear that actually physically happened. You all sat at a table.
Yeah.
We're discussing rather than.
It was a huge table, though.
Huge table.
I'm not used to meetings. It's like a room that's as big as a football field.
Yeah, it's huge.
Where does it happen? Can I know? Is it like Putrajaya, or what's the story? Where is this huge table?
There were different venues.
Lanai Kijang.
It's huge.
Well, for one, I'm glad to hear that around this huge table. Hey, do arguments break out, by the way? Is there any shouting and chair throwing like in Parliament?
No,
No,
not
we
chair
were all
throwing, but there's
very
definitely raised voices.
yeah.
There's discourse. There's discourse for sure.
There's discourse.
Yeah.
Okay. Who has the loudest voice?
I don't know who it was actually.
Yeah, we were all very, very civil. And, I think the mask makes, kind of mutes the anger. I don't think there was any anger. No.
Oh, okay. Okay. In that case, I'm very glad to hear that, because it sounds like a table where potentially things might actually really get done.
I hope
That's
so.
what I'm hearing.
But
I think
there are many different levels, right? There's still the MKN. There's the what do they call the quartet ministers? At the operational level,
the senior ministers.
The senior, there's Minister of Defense who chairs the MKN currently, Minister of Finance, obviously Minister of Health, and Minister of Communications, I think, make up the quartet ministers. So they're the ones that decide.
Country Asmin, Dr. Sri Asmin.
Yeah, the operational level, but the council kind of gives directions more towards policy and things like that.
Okay. All in all, I would have to say that now that I have a small idea about what's going on around that huge table, I'm quite heartened to hear, and I'm excited
the
to hear.
Secretariat is Ministry of Finance for NRP.
And there are content specialists for every topic that's been tabled. So if you're talking about SMEs, Bang Negara is there, the officers are there and stuff. We talk about food distribution, JKM was there, whoever, all the help. So there are content specialists to either support, refute, or give more, shed more light on the topic that's being discussed. So it's a full-on discussion. Yeah, it goes on for 3 hours. It has never been less than 3 hours so far. It's long.
Well, some Malaysian meetings can go on much longer than that, because you got the kuih come in and then the tea come in.
The kuih's already on the table.
Yeah, the kuih's already on the table.
The kuih's already on the table.
The kuih must be in the room.
We're Malaysians, right?
Texting me to say have the quiche. It's really nice.
Oh my God, I got the same text. Must be from the same person. Try the quiche. No, but
All
it's
right.
really, really serious topics and really serious discussions. It's draining. I think, I was flat by the time we were done. It's long.
Well, on behalf of myself and a lot of people, I want to say to both of you, thank you so much for being in that room. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit of what goes on in the room with us. Before we go, I always like to leave on a little bit of an up note, something slightly positive. Perhaps you can start with you, Chini. What do you hope is good or will be good that is going to happen or come out of all of this?
That, for me, it's important that we feed people immediately, and that the government is involved, and that we have a sustainable plan that's actually implemented with all the collaborations going on. That we really don't leave anyone behind anymore, and that it doesn't matter. People need to eat. So I'm really hopeful that that happens immediately, and I don't need to wait a month to get what we need, and that people listen and actually do something about it. So I'm hopeful about that.
Yes,
and let's see what happens with child protection.
Yeah. Being on inverted commas the ground with the whole branch as well, I echo you in that. Help needs to come now rather than after filling out 64
I can't wait for the budget.
Yeah. And Professor Adeeba, what's good? What's good that's going to happen soon?
Well, hopefully we will address the shortcomings in the health system that brought us to our knees, because we had a public health system, both the larger public health system as well as the public health discipline that, that's been chronically underinvested, and that hopefully that will be seriously addressed this year and the coming years, that we need a strong public health system, because if we don't, everybody's affected, right? And like Tini, I hope we will address, and not leave people behind, the migrant workers, the refugees, the people in prison, the urban poor, who were, if we all thought we had it bad in the pandemic, compared to they had to live through. So I sincerely hope that, as a nation, we reflect and not just, rejoice at the, this turning over of the pandemic, try and fix all the shortcomings that we as a society had, and most importantly, that we all start being kind to one another. I think if we start with that point, that we will be kind to one another, we will then address the hungry people, we will address the undocumented migrants and give them decent living, we will address the prison problem. It's got to start by being kind to one another.
I think you have just, at least in my books, hit the nail on the head. Just be kind. It is a strength that I believe many people don't truly understand, that how strong kindness is. And you're right, by being kind, a lot of other dominoes will fall. And those issues you were talking about, people being hungry, prisons, migrants, might eventually lessen or completely go away. So with that, I want to say thank you so much, Professor Adeeba and Dr. Hartini. Thank you so much for being on the show. I do wish you all the best, and I look forward to more good news coming out of the National Recovery Council, from both, not just both of you, but from everyone else as well. So thank you again, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you. Good night.
Bye. Good night.
Bye. All right, so there you go. Professor Adeeba and Dr. Hartini, members of the National Recovery Council, who have had 4 meetings so far, and there's a timeline of about 2 years where they will be looking into the recovery of this nation post-pandemic and what happens next. And as Professor Adeeba said earlier, the pandemic has merely shone a spotlight. It has put a microscope onto the issues and problems that Malaysia has probably always had as a nation, and now it's being shoved in our face. And that's what I take away from this particular episode of What's Going on Malaysia. And I was just watching and reading the comments. Guys, man, I don't know what's going on. There's a couple of characters in there who were just shooting off the hip. Anshe Azman Adnan, I think. I don't know where he's still in the room. Dead hell bent on taking stabs at Hartini. I don't know why, but whatever you feel, brother. So, guys, thank you so much for commenting as well, and thank you so much for sharing this clip, this video, this live streaming. If you have not shared it, last chance, share it now. Thank you for staying till the end. It is Monday, 18th of October. I do the show, What's Going on Malaysia, because basically I'm looking for the answer to the question, what's going on Malaysia? And therefore, I invite the guests that I do to help me answer this question. Have we answered that question? I won't say we've completely answered the question, but I definitely feel we've got a step closer to understanding where our country is going, what's happening to it, and what we as citizens, i.e. you and me, can do to aid or to help or to support this country getting to a better place. And in the words of Professor Adeeba, we can start with by being kind. Be kind in the comment section. Dudes, people out there, a lot of heat, a lot of trolls. I can see, but Yeah. You know what? Che Azman Ahmad, be kind. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you watching. Thank you for watching What's Going On in Malaysia. My name is Hartini Zainuddin. I will be announcing the next episode very, very soon. If you're following me on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube or Instagram, thank you again, and thank you for being part of this experience. I'll see you guys real soon. I'm just gonna end off by telling you that my comedy club, the Joke Factory, is opening. We're opening on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. My show alive again. If you're in Kuala Lumpur in Publica, please come and watch the comedy happening at the Joke Factory. Send me a message. I'll give you the details, or not. Follow the Joke Factory online, jokefactory.com.my. With that, I want to say good night. I'm going to end off with the Joke Factory video to say that we're opening again. I'll see you guys real